according to a bunch of reporting, both Patel and Bongino have been frustrated with Bondi for a while now. In the Epstein case, Bongino felt that Bondi had overpromised and underdelivered, which, to be fair, I guess she kind of did. I mean, she was definitely hyping the revelations up before saying nothing to see here. But behind the scenes, Patel and Bongino may have been more agreeable than they claim.
Señores, Donald Trump nunca había estado tan desesperado. Y ahora entendemos el porqué. Porque este podría ser el punto más bajo de toda su presidencia. Ya no solo está perdiendo apoyo dentro de su gabinete, sino que incluso sus propios seguidores MAGA se le están volcando en contra. ¿Quién acaba de empeorar el panorama? Elon Musk. Así, señores, el mismo Elon Musk, que alguna vez fue su aliado, ahora se ha estado convirtiendo en su peor pesadilla. Y lo está haciendo doblando la apuesta con nuevas acusaciones sobre Jeffrey Epstein. Antes de mostrarles exactamente qué fue lo que publicó Elon Musk, lo que tiene a Trump al borde de una crisis nerviosa, quiero que pongamos el contexto con lo que está sucediendo dentro de su administración.
This is not the most important part of the story, but I will just pause here for a moment because a personal feud between the FBI director, the FBI deputy director, and the attorney general that is so intense it warrants a peacemaking meeting hosted by the White House chief of staff, who has a lot on her plate. Well, this may be a first, and I've worked in 2 administrations, but this may be a first. Now, according to a bunch of reporting, both Patel and Bongino have been frustrated with Bondi for a while now. In the Epstein case, Bongino felt that Bondi had overpromised and underdelivered, which, to be fair, I guess she kind of did. I mean, she was definitely hyping the revelations up before saying nothing to see here. But behind the scenes, Patel and Bongino may have been more agreeable than they claim. Bondi's deputy at the Justice Department, Trump's former defense attorney Todd Blanche, said in a social media post, "I worked closely with Patel and Bongino on the joint FBI and DOJ memo regarding the Epstein files. All of us signed off on the contents of the memo and the conclusions stated in the memo." And also, a source familiar with Bondi and Blanche's thinking told NBC News that all of them were on the same page on this all along until the...
Como bien lo explicó Jen Psaki, hay figuras como ser Dan Bongino, como ser Kash Patel, que podrían estar filtrando información, intentando desesperadamente coordinar con una historia en común, para no quedar mal con la base MAGA. La razón de esto, porque viven del negocio de venderle fantasías a este movimiento, y no pueden permitirse quedar como traidores. Lo mismo, lógicamente, aplica para Elon Musk, que en las últimas semanas su imagen entre los seguidores de Trump se ha desplomado, ¿no? Y ahora está intentando recuperarla, filtrando lo que sabe sobre el caso Epstein. Todo explotó nuevamente luego de que saliera a luz un informe que es algo que debería de preocuparnos a todos. Durante una redada en 2019, cuando Trump aún era presidente en su primer mandato, las autoridades incautaron un disco duro oculto en una caja fuerte en la mansión de Epstein. Tuvieron que usar una sierra eléctrica para poder abrir esa caja. Ese material, según un ex fiscal del estado de Florida, sigue sin revelarse al público, y la administración de Trump insiste en que ya liberó toda la información, aunque claramente eso no es verdad. ¿Y quién lo dice? Pues adivinen, Elon Musk. En respuesta a un nuevo mensaje de Trump pidiendo unidad y que dejen de atacar a Pam Bondi, Elon responde con lo siguiente: "Entonces, simplemente libera los archivos como prometiste". Y añadió lo siguiente: ¿qué clase de sistema permite que miles de niños sean abusados, que el gobierno tenga videos de abusadores y que ninguno enfrente cargos? Pues lógicamente, Elon Musk está señalando a Trump y Bondi que están ocultando información, que existen videos, que hay evidencia y que los están encubriendo. Pam Bondi dice que es para proteger a las víctimas, pero Trump no habla de víctimas. Trump solo habla del mismo. Y recordemos algo. Trump era presidente en 2019, cuando esa caja fue abierta. Trump era presidente cuando el material fue incautado. Trump es quien no quiere que lo veamos. Entonces, ¿por qué la base MAGA está tan enojada contra Pam Bondi, ¿no? Y no contra Trump? ¿Acaso no ven que todo esto ha pasado bajo su mandato? Tal y cual lo explicó Jamie Raskin en el siguiente fragmento.
Power gets to do whatever they want, which of course is the Trump MAGA vision for our future.
Congressman Raskin, I would like to hear what you think about some of the comments of the White House border czar, Tom Homan, on Fox News earlier this week.
Look, people need to understand, ICE officers and Border Patrol, they don't need probable cause to walk up to somebody, briefly detain them, and question them. They just need the totality of the circumstances, right? They just got through the observation, you know, get articulable facts based on their location, their occupation, their physical appearance, their actions.
So, Congressman Raskin, that's probable cause he's just dismissing casually. And then you have Donald Trump, who posted on Truth Social authorizing law enforcement to arrest ICE protesters using, quote, any means necessary. What do you make of these developments for the rule of law in America?
It's plainly unconstitutional. There are constitutions on earth that operate like that, which say either there's a state of emergency, which can be unilaterally declared by an executive that then empowers the executive branch and the police and army to do whatever they want. There are some authoritarian constitutions which establish that as a norm. Neither of those is the American Constitution. Our Constitution applies in peacetime and wartime. It applies if we have a Democratic president or a Republican president. We don't have special exceptions which say the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply if Donald Trump is president. We don't have exceptions which say, well, if we're dealing with immigrants, the Constitution doesn't govern and due process doesn't operate. Justice Scalia was someone emphatic about that point, that due process operates both for non-citizens and for citizens. I've got MAGA colleagues who say to me, well, you don't think we've got due process for guilty people, do you? And I just have to crack up because we don't know if they're guilty until there's been due process. And that's what due process is all about. That's what the presumption of innocence is all about. That's what probable cause and the search warrant requirements are all about in the Fourth Amendment.
Congressman Raskin, I want to get your reaction to some breaking news that is happening right now on the president's social media platform, where he announced 30% tariff rate for the European Union starting on August 1st. That was while you were answering the first question at the start of this block. And then as you were answering Elise's question, he announced the same 30% tariff rate on Mexico. Your reaction to that?
Well, maybe I should stop talking because it sounds like he's completely out of it sounds like he's completely out of control. Look, the International Court of Trade, the American court system has been uniform and emphatic about this, right? Congress, under Article 1 of the Constitution, has the power to regulate commerce among the states and with foreign nations. Congress has always been the one to control tariffs and in limited cases has delegated power to the president. Now we've got a president who claims he's got the power to impose tariffs on the entire world, except for Russia, of course. But he's got the power to impose tariffs on everybody for whatever reason, including in the case of Brazil and Bolsonaro, because he's mad at the government there for actually holding his alter ego in Brazil to account for trying to overthrow an election a la January 6th. And then he goes ahead and just imposes these extraordinary tariffs on the people of Brazil. He thinks he can do whatever he wants, but that's not our system. And the courts have said, look, the Congress has not delegated that authority to the president. If we tried to say the president can impose whatever tariffs he wants, that itself would be an unconstitutional delegation of power to the president of the United States. We can't give our lawmaking power over to the president. So, look, we've been winning the vast majority of these cases in district courts and in appeals courts. Our problem has been in the Supreme Court on some of them, not on all of them. We need all of the courts to uphold the rule of law here and say the president is just finger painting on the Constitution. He does not have the power to impose these tariffs. In the Brazil one, for example, he was saying, well, I'm imposing this because of the trade problems they've caused for us. We have a $7.5 billion trade surplus with Brazil. And he just decided to impose it because he wanted to show, his fidelity to his friend Bolsonaro, who he feels is being unfairly treated by the Democratic government there.
Congressman, I misspoke. Those announcements by Trump they came before the segment started. So sorry to snatch back some of your power there.
Don't worry, because we believe in accuracy here. Right. So people should take note. Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you so much for joining.
La realidad, amigos, es muy simple. Donald Trump está utilizando el Departamento de Justicia como una herramienta para protegerse. A él no le interesa la verdad, a él le interesa es el poder. Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, Elon Musk, todos están jugando el mismo juego. Proteger sus carreras mediáticas, sus negocios, sus millones. No buscan justicia, simplemente buscan conservar la audiencia. Ahora bien, amigos, quiero que pasemos a hablarlo con lo siguiente. Al parecer el destino de una moneda tan importante, ¿no?, como lo es el dólar. Hablamos de la moneda más importante del mundo. Al parecer depende del estado de ánimo de Trump al despertar. Sé que suena absurdo, pero eso, amigos, es exactamente lo que han venido advirtiendo tantos economistas en todo este tiempo. Y no estoy exagerando con el tema. Quiero que hablemos de cómo las políticas erráticas, las declaraciones impulsivas y la falta de respeto por las instituciones ponen en riesgo el dólar estadounidense. No solo es un tema académico o de expertos, ¿no?, porque es algo que termina afectando a todos, porque detrás del dólar hay un sistema financiero global, señores. Se mueven trillones, influye en los precios, influye en importaciones y hasta, como vemos, en la estabilidad económica mundial. Quiero que veamos un fragmento del análisis por parte del economista Ken Rugoff, ex jefe del FMI, donde explica exactamente lo que está en juego.
I'd like to bring in a true economics expert now, Ken Rogoff. Ken, formerly, as I mentioned, served as the chief economist and director of research at the International Monetary Fund. He's a professor of economics at Harvard University. He's the author of multiple books, including the recently published Our Dollar, Your Problem, an insider's view of 7 turbulent decades of global finance and the road ahead. Ken, welcome back to the show. Good to see you.
Thank you, Ali. That was a great overview. I'm still absorbing it all. That was fantastic.
Well, I coming from you, I really appreciate that. Let's put this in context. The dollar's value has dropped by a few percentage points over the last few months. What are the major forces driving that?
Well, it's not just the value of the dollar, but what you said of going on in interest rates and the fact that maybe a third of our market-held debt is outside the United States. That brings down our interest rates for everybody. It brings down mortgages, car loans, student loans. And I think you also underscored that the fact that so much of the world runs on the dollar, our financial system is really the network, the veins of the global financial system, gives us this incredible power to put on sanctions instead of invade a country or go to war, to spy on other countries and sort of know what's going on with terrorists, what rogue states our enemies are doing. And it's been fraying at the edges for a decade, maybe, because we've been very active with sanctions and countries like China have been moving away, but it's like nothing compared to how scared everyone is with the trade war and many things. Part of why we think the dollar is safe is because you think you're a foreign investor, you have to go to court, you'll get treated fairly. Some imperial power won't say, no, don't pay them. I don't want you to pay them. You trust our court system, you trust our Federal Reserve, you trust our institutions. So the whole program of undermining our institutions also weakens the case for the dollar. That can happen overnight, but I think it's going to happen where the dollar is going to come down a couple notches over the next decade, and it's going to cost us.
Now, there are other forces in the world that would like to see that happen, but I want to sort of figure out where China stands on this. On one hand, China is a very, very large holder of U.S. dollars, of U.S. debt. So, sure, would they like to become the reserve currency, or would the BRICS group, of which China is a big part, like to create? They talk about creating an alternative currency. Maybe, but on the other hand, they all have a lot of dollars. So what's China's role in the weakness or strength of the American dollar?
Well, it's very big. You should think of this in terms of market share. Europe doesn't use the dollar. They have a regional currency. And I think at the end of all this, that's what's going to come out of Asia, that the yuan's going to become the regional currency in much of Asia and even used in places, Africa, Latin America. Now, it's not all about, do you hold dollars? Do you hold their currency? You need to have a framework. You need to have an alternative banking structure to do trade, to be able to do transactions. But they're working on that, and these new technologies make it a lot easier. They've been doing that for a while. When Russia had the full-scale invasion of Ukraine and China saw what we did to Russia with the sanctions, we seized their central bank assets or froze them. They already were accelerated. Now they see Donald Trump and the trade war, and they also see he's talking maybe, not in earnest yet about not paying in full our debt. He's talking about getting rid of the Federal Reserve Chair, bringing interest rates down to 1%, which would mean a lot of inflation and undermining the dollar. All of this is sort of having people move for the exits. It's not quick, but it's happening.
You started this conversation by pointing out that one shouldn't think of the value of the dollar independent of the fact that the strength of the dollar is backstopped by our bond market. So when Donald Trump talks about the Fed reducing rates and things like that, there is actually a free market in part of this that isn't controlled by the president and not necessarily controlled by the Fed either.
No, the Fed does not control our Federal Reserve, our central bank. It actually only controls the overnight interest rate, which is mainly of interest to banks. That influences the other interest rates. But the 10-year interest rate, that's the bellwether of global financial markets. That's really set by what markets think is going to happen, not just what the Federal Reserve is going to do, what's supply and demand, how many people are going to invest, what savings going to be. And also, how trustworthy are future governments? How much can they trust the United States? What do they think, really what's going on in global markets? And that's been going up the last few years. And Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill where he wants to borrow more than Biden did, which is really strange given he campaigned on how terrible that was. And these other things are pushing those rates up. And I think that's where it's really going to hurt us the most.
Back now with Ken Rogoff, professor of economics at Harvard University. I've got my trusty dollar here as a prop. Ken, if you think about life in Canadian dollars or Australian dollars or Swiss francs, you care about where your currency is. But in America, we refer to the dollar as a reserve currency for the world. Commodities are traded in dollars. Tell me about whether that's important and why.
Well, it's a little bit like the fact it's really convenient for us that English is the global language. Believe it or not, even after the United Kingdom left the European Union, they still speak English at their meetings. And I would think of the dollar like that. Their trade between different countries is in dollars. And it's great because it makes it very transparent what our prices are. If you want to borrow money and you say you're earning dollars, everybody loves it. There are just so many benefits that gives us. And I think there are over 150 currencies, and you can't be, speaking in all of them. It'd be like the Tower of Babylon. So having a couple currencies, but particularly the dollar, be fairly universal, I think it's important. But China and frankly, a lot of our friends don't like how we use it sometimes. We use it as an instrument of power. And I think for some time we've been leaning on it very heavily, even before Trump. But, with Trump, we're on a whole nother planet. It's not only financial sanctions, trade sanctions. If he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, or maybe someone in Vietnam didn't give his family business as good a deal on their resort as he wanted, suddenly there's a 35% tariff. I mean, what he did with Brazil, just suddenly saying, I don't like how you're treating the former president. You seem like you're doing to him what everyone did to me. Yep. 50% tariff on Brazilian goods, and on and on. And I think what it tells you, there is no deal to be had with this president. You can make concessions, And he likes to say, what's mine is mine, and what's yours, we'll keep talking about.
Yeah.
But, he won't let you take back the concessions, but he'll keep pushing for more, asking you for things that have nothing to do with trade. And I think, obviously it's hard to know where all of this is going, but I think a lot of the world is waking up to there's no deal to be had here. There's no lasting deal. I say one other thing, Mexico and Canada, he signed a free trade agreement with them in Trump 1. He signed it. He negotiated it. He gets in Trump 2, tears it up. And why won't that happen to everybody else? So I think, he says a lot of deals are coming. He says everyone's making a lot of concessions. I don't think so. I think they're biding their time. He's trying to prevent them from retaliating, but that's going to come if he persists.
Yeah, we have two deals, one with the UK and one that Vietnam doesn't confirm is actually a deal with them. Let me ask you something. Donald Trump talks about wanting to export more stuff from America. One way to do that is for the dollar to decline and for American-made goods and services to be cheaper around the world. Is that a sound strategy? Is that a good way to increase our manufacturing base in the United States? Or are we too big an importer where the offset to that is too great?
Well, the dollar was high when Trump came into office. And I think at Harris 1, the dollar would have come down. I think with Trump, a lot of other things are happening behind this. But yeah, I think the dollar was high, so it made our exports more expensive. I actually think we're way more competitive in services, things like financial services, consulting, medical services, intellectual property rights. Have a big surplus in that stuff. And the dollar coming down, it makes us more competitive. On manufacturing, I think the false hope here is we're going to bring back those great manufacturing jobs you'd see in the beer commercials and whatever. They're not coming back. I mean, in the 1970s, we used to have ads like that about farming. America is a superpower in farming, but not because of jobs. It's all automated. And I think, sure, we'll have more manufacturing here, but there won't be a lot of these great jobs that Trump is promising.
Ok, amigos. Donald Trump no toma decisiones económicas basadas en estrategias claras, sino que lo hace basada en una rencilla personal, en caprichos. Y literalmente, ¿no? Es como él se levante de la cama. Y eso no es una broma, amigos, eso es una bomba de tiempo para la economía global. Este tipo que es Ken Rugoff no es un activista, no es un periodista sensacionalista, es un economista muy serio. Hablamos del ex jefe del FMI, profesor de Harvard. Y nos está diciendo que Trump no solo pone en riesgo acuerdos comerciales, sino que también atenta contra la confianza en el dólar, como la moneda de reserva mundial. Yo creo que eso sí que duele, ¿no? Porque el dólar no es fuerte solo por la economía de Estados Unidos, sino porque es algo mucho más importante, es la confianza en las instituciones, en el sistema judicial, en la Fed, en la independencia política, señores. Pero cuando Trump dice que quiere eliminar, por ejemplo, ¿no?, al presidente de la Reserva Federal, o que va a bajar las tasas de interés al 1%, ¿no?, y sin tener un criterio económico, lo que está haciendo aquí es erosionar con esa confianza. Además, ¿cómo se supone que los mercados globales van a confiar en un país cuyo líder prácticamente cambia de opinión cada vez que alguien no le da un buen trato? Eso no es diplomacia comercial, señores, eso es chantaje. No es política, es una telenovela. Sé que algunos me dirán, pero Trump defiende a Estados Unidos, busca proteger la industria. Claro. Mientras tanto, arruina relaciones comerciales, espanta inversiones, genera inestabilidad. ¿Acaso ustedes creen que un país va a querer invertir en bonos americanos si es que el día de mañana Trump decide no pagarlos porque no le gustó cómo lo saludaron? No se puede permitir tener un payaso con el poder nuclear y control sobre la moneda más importante del mundo. Y no digo esto como un fanático político, ¿no?, sino que lo digo en el sentido común económico. El problema no solo es Trump, sino que es la forma de gobernar que tiene, esa forma errática, personalista, impulsiva. Él está socavando décadas de construcción en la confianza del sistema financiero global. Y el dólar no puede sobrevivir si es que esa confianza se erosiona. Pues bueno, amigos, ahora les pregunto a ustedes. ¿Ustedes creen que un presidente debe tomar decisiones económicas tan importantes simplemente basadas en su humor? ¿Será que debería haber reglas muy claras? Las instituciones sólidas y el respeto por el orden internacional. Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Recuerden, como siempre, dale like, compártelo y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.